This is RackAddicts After Hours.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, ladles and jelly spoons, however you want to call it. We are RackAddicts After Hours-ing, I'm reliably told, episode 11, in the midst of Storm Dennis, I think, but we're in shelter. We've got Pete, we've got Andy, we've got Telmo, and I'm Ben. We've got a few little topics, bits and pieces. Should be a nice, short, punchy one. Pete, where are we going?
Okay, so there's a few things that I thought were relatively fresh. They're sort of announcements over the last week or so that were certainly things I'd picked up on. And the first one I wanted to talk about, because I'm rather excited and I think I'll be getting one, is the Zen Delay, which is a collaboration between Erica and I'm struggling to find who they're collaborating
Wasn't
with.
it some like DJ label something?
So based in London. So Ninja Tune.
Anybody know anything about them? I got nothing.
I have no idea.
Never heard it before.
No idea.
Tell us more about it.
So the Ninja Delay is I would say a desktop unit. It sort of has a kind of pedal, delay pedal type format, but there's no actual foot switches at all. So it's exclusively or
desktop effects unit, as you can call it.
See, looking at it, I was wondering if that was like a 19-inch rack beast.
Massive.
No, it's not quite that big, but we
were talking like
knobs as big as the Shadow Hills.
Oh, those ones.
I mean, it's quite substantial, and they're relatively big knobs. So you've got effectively a digital delay, but it's got some analog elements to it to really work.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I did check out a quick demo, and there were some of those weird, glitchy delay things when the time goes really, like the Bafako Crush delay. I love that thing. So you put the time up, and it just makes really strange noises.
Looking at the picture, it kind of looks like a guitar pedal, but there's no pedals.
No, that's what I was saying. There's no switches. Yeah. It is designed to be on the desktop. It's stereo in, stereo out. You've got various delay options, but then on top of that, you've got a distortion circuit, and you've actually got a valve, which I assume they're using as part of the distortion circuit, and
valve.
A proper analog filter.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So it's quite an interesting sound sculpting device in its own right.
Yeah.
So I've heard some demonstrations where you can put some sort of basic audio through it, and you can really mangle it.
You
and
can
do
really weird it up.
I mean, the feedback it goes into almost endless feedback, and then beyond that, it starts self-resonating.
Oh, nice.
Cool. So it is relatively expensive. It's around the £500 mark.
That is a chunk.
Well, that is a chunk for a pedal. That is a chunk.
But if you think about the cost of some of the
Strymon stuff.
Yes.
Volanti.
Yeah,
it's a big one. 400 and
Big Sky.
Yep.
Timeline, all those sort of things.
I heard that the most ideal amount of money to spend on a pedal is £300. Does anyone?
You can get some serious stuff at £300. I reckon there's a Telmo. You'll be the man with the plan on this one. 250.
250, 300. Yeah. It's pushing it if you get to the 400 mark, to be fair. Especially for just one delay. But considering that this is not your regular, as I said, guitar pedal, I mean, it's got tape, ping pong, digital delay, crossover and delay off. So these are the regular modes that you can use. I mean, whatever tickles your fancy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very impressed with the demonstrations I've heard so far. I think I possibly will get one next week.
Oh, they are now?
Sorry?
Are they out now?
Yes, they're definitely available. Several UK retailers have got them, and several of the German retailers have got them in stock at the moment. So I'll be selecting the cheapest one I can get my hands on. And there is a bit of price variance, so
so you can snag a deal.
Yeah, potentially, and also I don't know how the pound's doing against the euro, so that's dependent.
Where are they coming in from?
Erica's Latvia. That's where they're made, at least. Well, don't know when they're manufactured, but that's where the company lives.
Yes.
Okay.
You can buy them directly from Latvia if you want, or you can go to, as I say, one of the dealers. They're certainly in stock with a lot of the modular dealers.
Oh, okay.
And some of the larger suppliers in the UK have got them.
Erica's a cool company, actually, because they announced, I don't know if it's a limited edition thing, they did the Syntrax, which is that, is it VCS3 type thing with a digital pin matrix.
Please don't look at me when you say these things.
Hello, Andy. I'm staring at you. Tell me about synths.
I'm really confused.
Vintage, you'll know it. Vintage synth, quite square, got that patch matrix with like the pins in it. You will have seen one.
Okay.
Okay, he's going with me. So the English company called Synthy, it's a classic one, but Erica did one with
EMS.
Did I say Synthy is not the company? That's the synth.
Yeah,
EMS.
Synthy. It looks like an EMS.
Good thing we've got the expert on hand to correct me when I spout twaddle.
Yeah, because I never would have known.
You never would have known.
There's a vast difference in price. So
oh yeah.
So you can still buy an EMS at about 15,000.
I could get my
or you can get one of these for 3-4, I want to say.
Yeah, it's about 4, I think. But yeah, what I think was actually quite a good innovation is that digital version of the pin matrix, because per pin you've got an attenuverter as well, and you can save your patches on the matrix. So it's a cool thing. It's obviously inspired by it. They do that. Lots of great modular stuff, including the Game Changer collaboration, the lightning thing, the plasma drive Eurorack thing.
We
talked about last week.
Wait, have they done a Eurorack version of the plasma thing?
Yeah, and it's got sub oscillators in it as well. It's pretty beastly. And
I really like the look of that 19 amp. That's just the 19-inch rack version of that. It's just such a cool. It's just a want. It's not a need.
Oh no, of course it's not a need.
But
a desperate desire.
I'd like to. So that's like super overdriven. Is that like kind of a culture vulture-esque thing? Or
oh no, it is unique.
It's its own thing.
Imagine a really crispy, crackly, mad fuzz.
Okay.
It's that kind of area.
Okay.
It's not subtle at all.
It's kind of in the realm of radio transistors kind of thing, almost. Like,
I don't know enough about that kind of stuff.
It is a bit like that, especially the collaboration that they did with Jack White as well, which I don't recall the name right now.
It's the yellow version.
The yellow version, yeah. But Pete, I was just thinking, you've got a Nemesis delay, don't you?
Yes.
What is this going to bring to
the Nemesis delay is just purely delays, whereas this, as I say, the distortion circuit is quite interesting. And the fact it's got a filter is interesting, and the fact that the tails are the feedback is so long that it's infinite, or going beyond that it resonates.
So it's a different beast.
It's a completely different type of unit. It's a unit where you can actually freestyle on the unit itself. You can plumb something in like a beat, and then you can completely just pull that beat apart, trash it, loop it. I mean, it just is a very inspirational. It's almost you would. As I say, you would actually freestyle on this in potentially in a live situation.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so it's like bringing some rack stuff into an area that would be more interactive, I suppose. That's what you call them pedals because they're a similar shape, but they're just desktop outboard, really.
Yeah.
With the Nemesis, it's invariably I've got presets, and you can have up to 4 presets, and I've got them set for various tracks. And then once it's set up and you've got the delay time that you're looking for, then you're good to go. And it just runs, and it's just adding an effect, where this is way more than that.
Okay. So I see underneath there the name that really springs to mind as a bit of a nerd. The Deckard's Dream.
Yeah, so the people behind the Deckard's Dream have now come out with a Mark II version. I'm not sure how particularly different it is. I think it's more to do with the form factor rather than anything else. So the original was a kind of 19-inch rack type form, and it was quite a deep case.
With all the voice cards kind of going out 90 degrees to the main board.
Whereas this is a much more it's a desktop type format, although it looks like the control surface is pretty much the same. It lays on its back, and it's only, what to say?
Inch and a bit.
Yeah,
maybe
max
2 inches.
So it's not
5 to 6 centimetres.
It's not rack mountable, that's not 19 inches.
No, it's difficult to tell, and it's got wooden end cheeks as well.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It might be you could go either way, but I haven't seen any evidence to being able to rack mount it.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, you've got the other version.
You could just like custom. I mean, these things are. The one that I've seen you talk about, it's build it yourself. Really, it's DIY. So
you can buy it built.
I was gonna. Oh, okay, fair enough. But I was gonna say, if you're like skilled enough to put that thing together, putting it into a rack mount kind of situation isn't going to be that much of a problem.
No, I mean there is a gentleman currently. His name escapes me. Who's got a YouTube channel who reviews gear and so forth, and he's currently in the midst of a build. And he's doing
is that one guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Guy.
There's about 3,000 of them.
Cool. You guys.
3 million of them.
Yeah. So he's doing a step by step, and he's doing updates on as he's built.
I'm going to look him up while you guys keep.
With this, there is
going.
a certain amount of surface mount, and that type of work is not for everyone.
No.
If you haven't got the right equipment, or you're really not. You don't think your soldering skills are up to it, I would steer away from surface mounted.
I like the sound of that. That sounds like Kieran. If you're listening, this is a challenge for you. Quickly Google it and see if we can bring it to life.
But the kit is still, the circuit board kit itself, and this is just the circuit boards, it's $999.
How much is a faceplate?
I believe the original, because you buy the case from a third party who did it, the original one was $250 for the case.
So you're talking 1,100 there or thereabouts pounds for it?
Yeah, approximately that. You haven't even bought the components or the sliders. The big cost is going to be the actual sliding attenuators.
Fair enough. Do we have a sort of guesstimate on the price?
I would imagine, looking at the amount of sliders on there's a good fair few. You're into a good 600.
600.
I'd want to say for all the sliders with all the components, depending on where you buy them from. I tend to buy a lot of the types of custom synths from various retailers in the US.
So let's say hypothetically we're looking at $2,000, right? To
build yourself, and we're talking 3.5 to buy one built.
That's still really good, especially when you consider how much would a CS80 set you back?
Well, the other thing to consider, and sorry to bring up the B word, but invariably Behringer are going to come out with one of these. I mean, threatening it by showing off a CS80 that they pulled in.
You can get that now. I mean, like for everything brilliant that Behringer's doing, if I want that now, I want that now. That's the thing. That's all I could say. Like Behringer, I can't see it coming out until 2022.
Wow, it's wild.
Do you know what I mean, though? Do you think that's a fair guesstimate?
I reckon it'll be a lot sooner than we think. I think it might even be this year, end of this year.
No.
I reckon.
Well, they've already lined up.
I'm with Ben on this one. I think they know what people want. And
considering how out of the blue the Poly D came out, how quickly they followed up with that ARP 2600.
I think the ARP 2600, though, was a read between the lines to Korg for having the, audacity to, you want to re-release your own product?
How dare you
do that?
Knowing how long it take the pipelining for actually production and development and production, they would have been working on this for quite some time, and possibly a couple of years.
Is it a question like the 2600? Do you know if they've got someone that maybe is doing something like that's been building like CS80 clones for quite a while, and they've just approached this guy and said, "Hey, you know what? Anything
official, but I know they bought in a CS80 about a year ago. I want to say.
It was one band that they bought a bunch of their stuff at an auction, wasn't it? I can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not.
So what's the average price of a CS80 right now?
You're talking 60 grand, right?
So much.
Jesus.
We'll have to look it up. But interestingly, Andy, you mentioned because I can never remember the guy's name. But there's the guy who had made all those Eurorack modules of the 2600, who they've brought in as kind of, I guess, a consultant on the whole thing.
I think that was episode 9. We mentioned that guy.
Through the Modular Cafe, we have an inside look into how this kind of process works. Have I spoken about this yet?
No.
Okay, so we mentioned him ages ago. I'm not going to get an episode because I have no idea. Jason Lane, who's the guy who does Jasper Synth, the Wasp, EDP Wasp clone. He makes the PCBs, is kind of known in the ultra nerdy synth DIY community. He spent... We need to get him on the podcast at some point because he's a really interesting guy. He spent numerous years building the VCS3, which is the one we're talking EMS again, that one with the
I know the one,
the upright thing. It's
not the suitcase one.
No, it is the suitcase. It's not the thing. Is that the Synthy?
Yeah, that's close to the Synthy. The gentleman he brought it along to the Modular Cafe.
Yeah, well, we've got two guys who bring along the same thing. One of them that isn't Basil. Basil
I don't have the audacity to remember. I know what he's not called.
Basil has the original. Jason has a clone that he built painstakingly over a number of years.
It's the one that took a bit of umbrage when I suggested that had he thought about knocking up a few more.
Possibly because it took him so long. It's that guy. Yeah.
It doesn't understand the principle. It's just as quick to build two than it is to build.
Not in the way that he did it, because it took him quite a long time. But he was approached by Yuli Behringer himself.
Oh wow!
Via email, and he said, "Oh, we've seen that you've got one of these things. You've made one. Can we have the plans?" Basically, and they had a back and forth a bit. They were sort of talking about various alterations to the design that Jason then made on the design, he made those alterations in these plans, sent those to Yuli Behringer, and heard nothing. So
I shouldn't laugh. That's awful.
I know, right? So Yuli
fucked.
Behringer is in possession of plans for. I've got to get the model name right. So.
That sucks.
Of a
so
certain.
hard.
Oh man! So
I'm sorry. Who is it? It's not Jason. Not Jason. If you're listening,
Well,
man, that sucks.
Yeah. So EMS Synth A. That's the clone, the suitcasey
So
one.
he didn't go for the principle you pay first or you may not like.
He
I shouldn't
didn't
laugh. It's horrible.
Yeah, so
I would be so hacked off. At
EMS Synth
Oh,
A.
that's the Pink Floyd one.
Yeah, the classic.
Really? He made. Oh, right. Sorry, I got really excited. I've been after that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, well, I say after it. I love it. Like,
Yeah.
it's Pink Floyd.
It's the on the run
It's
synth.
on the run.
That's
yeah.
a fantastic impression, Andy.
Thank
I love
you,
it.
yeah, it's
But
good.
yeah,
Should
Yuli
be
Behringer.
Yeah, but I'm not going to give
Yeah.
Behringer my example because I know what happens now.
Yuli Behringer is in possession. He has the
He's
plans.
probably, yeah, if he's listening,
for one of these.
that's mine.
So yeah, it's good. You heard it here first. Jason Lane needs credit for the incredible work that he put into making plans for this thing.
That's incredible. Are they going to do the keyboard with it? Has he done the keyboard with it? Because is it a touch keyboard?
It is
too many questions.
Jeez, Andy,
Sorry.
you're so hyper now, just at the mention of a Synth A.
It's because I had a Lucas 8 today.
He definitely should have sort of firmed up the T's and C's before handing anything over.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there wasn't much or any of that. So
Trouble is, if you
expect a Synth A clone from Behringer in the next 6 months.
The thing is, if I would imagine he sent them in all goodwill, but he can't understand what he's dealing with. He's dealing with quite a hard-nosed business person.
I don't think goodwill exists in the Behringer universe, unfortunately. But so we'll see when that turns up on the news feeds.
Okay, well, we've got a bit of history on it. Yeah, so going back to the Deckard's Dream, it looks pretty the same as the original. They've obviously redesigned the circuitry so they can get into this slimmer case because it's a series of cards that came off a motherboard, so to speak, and they've had to dramatically redesign how all those cards fit together, or they've changed the sort of actual sort of circuitry or planning to get it into this form factor. But I quite like this form factor, and it's the sort of form factor I would expect that Behringer would mostly follow.
Oh,
in fact,
absolutely.
I could see the Behringer one being another rack mount, a bit like the 26.
Well, the thing is, they teased that they've been working on the Polyphonic Aftertouch keyboard, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be going for a full-size big boy.
Really?
Yeah.
That is a very big sin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
do you think it'll be how much?
Well, yeah,
any of you guys know
news
off the off
from
chance? I'd hate to know
news
how much
from
one of those
Telmo.
things
He's
weighs.
looked it up. We've had a 22,900 pounder. What is that? Sort of a live listing?
So right now they are going for about 22,000.
Is that eBay or Reverb?
£99. This is private sellers, and this one in particular, it's in the south, here around London. But yeah, I mean, there was one that went about 4 years ago for $30,000. But there's not a lot of, unfortunately, there's not a lot of information about how
they're selling privately.
I was going to say
they're
they're either in a bank or it would be someone like approaching someone at a studio, and it's like, I see you've got that. I would like that.
Yeah.
Can
I will give you more than it's worth. Here, take it, please. Now.
Exactly.
They were always really expensive, even back in the day when they were new. They were eye-wateringly unaffordable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's outrageous. Maybe that's where I got the 60,000 thing from.
Yeah, maybe
Stevie Wonder used it for most of the on the what's his most famous album? The
I don't know any Stevie Wonder tunes.
The one that's orange.
There's like In the City. Is that the same album?
Isn't that Songs in the Key of Life?
Songs in the Key of Life. That's the one.
Dude, that is a banger of a record.
He used the CS80 in about 3 or 4 tracks of that
like
album,
if we're going to talk CS80, we have to say Vangelis,
as well, and Blade Runner. Yeah, Blade Runner.
Yeah,
that's where the name comes from.
Yep. That's where the name comes from. And then what's the other one? Is Something of Fire? I want to say that Vangelis did.
Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire. That's it. The Ring of Fire.
He was also with Yes for a time.
Johnny Cash.
Was he?
Yes. So he did the album he did with Yes. Or certainly, I was obsessed with it way back in the day. It's called Relayer.
Okay.
And it was Rick Wakeman was elsewhere or whatever the situation was, and Vangelis stepped in for that album. And it's a particularly unique Yes album that's distinctly different. To
a lot of distinctly different Yes eras. Isn't there?
And it just he had brought the Vangelis sort of flavour into the Yes kind of.
Of course, not mentioning Jean-Michel Jarre.
What a boy.
What a man.
I'm sure he would have had one.
Yeah, or two.
Yeah.
Why not? So we've gone a bit of Deckard's Dream stuff. I would like to freeball the conversation, direct it into the world of experimental music. We had a Modular Cafe. What day of the week were we on? It was on Thursday, so that was a few days ago. Pete played an absolutely joyous set that nearly made me cry. It was absolutely incredible, and I'm not joking, Pete. It was beautiful.
Yeah, there were actually tears in his eyes when I spoke to him about it earlier.
Literally, I love it so much. Anyway, the previous set was probably as different as you could possibly be. One of our regulars, who will probably want to be known by Fred Smith on this particular podcast, he had 1.5 pedal boards with lots of ZVEX stuff, and he was starting out with like self-oscillating fuzzes. It was all guitar pedals. There was no, in inverted commas, sound source. There was no guitar. He started with these fuzzes doing their own thing. Took him a little while to get going, but there's some really interesting rhythms that he managed to kind of get repeating. I'm going to sample it later. I'm just going to have to get some of those as like kick drum type stuff. It was really cool noise music.
Right.
So there's always that thing. People say, "Oh, it's not music; it's just noise."
So it's avant-garde in its purest.
Absolutely.
sense.
I would be interested to know all three of you, your experiences with experimental music, making, listening, and any kind of regular consumption you may or may not have. I'm going to start out quickly with a small little story. My first ever paid live performance was in Asheville in North Carolina, which is pretty cool, at local 604 Bottle Shop. They have a SoundCloud, go listen to it. Lots of modular stuff. So this is really near Make Noise and Moog in America. It's like down the street from both of them. So I played a little modular set, another guy played a modular set, and they had a massive, massive PA in there. It was incredible. Mine was more melodic ambient. The other guy was super noisy. And when I was there, it was loud. There were really massive low frequencies, and it was an incredible experience. It was unsettling, and I mean, it was kind of upsetting, to be honest. It was so disturbing, these noises that came out of this guy's machine. And it was really enjoyable listening and, well, listening and experiencing.
Yeah.
It was just something else.
I think
listen back to it on SoundCloud. It was awful, and I hated it. So
I think that's the thing. You talk about the history of it. I think the biggest one that I came across was in a documentary I was watching. I think it might have been I can't remember, but it was to do with the train track recording. It was the rolling of the steam train. I think it's pretty famous. Like, you probably, if you've studied, tell me you know.
Yes, I did. He's had Pat Metheny as one of the guys to play in the album. He's a British composer.
Yeah, that was it. And then see, I really like the idea of experimental music from the point of view of, back in the, let's say, the 60s, when people would, literally, I think we were talking about it, Pete, out of colleges, that these big synthesizers would arrive, and no one really knew what they were doing. And it's this, I mean, like, take something like the ARP.
So it's 2,500, we were saying it. $69,000
and it's
dollars,
just,
sorry.
Like, I've tried to program the little Odyssey, and I can't get anything out of it. You just get noise out of it. And but I think that relates down to the experimental part of it to a degree. What I really like about experimental music is that it's experimental. It's not necessarily that I would take the experimental side and particularly use it. I think it works well in a live situation where it's an experience as opposed to the
life outside of the journey of making it.
Exactly.
It doesn't have that much longevity like a catchy tune might.
Kind of, yeah. And I don't think it's like necessarily I'd sit on the train and I'd put on fuzz making melodic sounds, or like not even melodic sounds.
It was all rhythmic.
All rhythmic. I don't necessarily think I'd do that, but as someone that enjoys experiencing music, I would be more than up for sitting down and watching someone do it and seeing the process of going from just essentially noise into something maybe vaguely rhythmical or something like that, or watching someone program a synth out of nothing. Like, one of the ones that I really got into, and it's not experimental at all, but it's kind of that similar element of it, was watching Radiohead at Glastonbury 2017. I want to say it might have been 2018, but it was before one track, and it's just Tom York on, I think, a synth with a K oscillator, and it's just noise, and then it slowly builds into the do 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 do. That kind of stuff I like. The experimental side of it coming in. I don't know. Maybe it's experimental. Maybe it's not. It's all relative, but it's pretty cool. In my opinion, I love nothing more than when I've got some downtime at the studio, just prattling about, basically.
It's one of those things where you just want to have it, whatever it is, recording all the time, so you can go back to it, see if it's useful.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I know that Kieran at the studio hooked up just soldered a couple of jacks to a hard drive motor, and you just spin it and it makes sounds, and then you just run that through a delay, through a reverb, through whatever, and then all of a sudden you can kind of chop it up, sample it, and then maybe it turns into something, maybe it doesn't. But the experience of taking that sound and turning it into something from that point of view of experimental, not purist experimental, but just that idea of experimenting with sounds, I really enjoy. Tell me, what's your opinion?
I mean, you've started by mentioning something very interesting about the trains, and I think it was John Cage, the one who started with taking sounds that are, on our day-by-day lives, the trains or people talking, and turn it into music, which is very interesting. For me, it was kind of like the other way around. I've recently really gotten into Dvořák. He's a Czech composer, and he's one of those guys that he was basically the father of soundtracks for music, for in this case was like for Czech poems, and he was representing what was supposed to be an act, or in a little part of the story, he was representing with the weapons that he had, in this case the orchestra, the emotions and the moods of the people. So that really got me into how can you kind of like represent people from that perspective instead, and how can you represent emotions through sounds, and
rather than melodics or harmony.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I kind of started this whole journey, and then I ended up finding Brian Eno, and that really
classic.
That really just changed everything for me. It's
My Life in the Bush of Ghosts.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Music for airports, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine a guy going to the airport and hating the music so much that I had to dedicate his whole life into making, music more enjoyable? And ambient music really is an absolute legend. Ambient music plays a big part for me, as I'm a guy that does also all sorts of meditation and yoga and that sort of stuff. So binaural music, it's also something that I've always been interested about. There's a lot of sort of like theories about, 432 hertz is good for your chakras and stuff like that, which I don't really know. But it's something that's very interesting for me from the musical perspective. So, how about you, Pete?
I'm always curious or interested when I see some very strange techniques being utilised. So we've seen some really weird stuff at the Modular Cafe, on the sort of regular nights, and sometimes on the special events that you've put on. So I'm thinking of things like the Heinbach thing, when he's using those extended tapes where they're sort of looping
tape loop going around the mic stand,
3 meters around the mic stand and back. It's just the mechanics. I don't complain, but I do resist a bit when it starts getting a bit self-indulgent, where the sort of things go on a little bit too long.
I think that's always the risk of doing.
It did happen a bit at the Modular Cafe.
That's the thing. I think it's always the risk when you're doing experimental stuff.
How long can you
experiment going too far up your own art?
I mean, are you just, is it self-indulgent? Are you just trying to pad the set out? What's going on? But it's got to remain interesting for me. So the trouble is it can go for so long, and then it can get boring quickly. So they need to change, and maybe that's not what they're trying to achieve. So maybe I've got a short attention span. And as much as I like the sort of novelty of all these sort of things and how interesting they are, I still like a melody. Melody is what I'm about, because for me, in respect to music, it is melodies and tunes that produce the emotional responses that I'm looking for.
But it's a thing that's dying with time, especially in popular music. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yes, I mean, I would agree that a lot of it, because I would imagine that's because it's so formulaic, and they know something is successful, so let's keep pressing that old money button and just keep. And I know it's me being a bit of an old fuddy-duddy, but I sort of listen to a lot of stuff, sort of current stuff, and you go, there's not even a melody that I can pick up on it. It's very.
I think the weird thing is, though, is that music, as much as it produces a response, and there's that element of creativity toward it. I've spoken to you, Thelma, about putting together music and how to go from one thing into the other. That in itself is a formula, even though it's driven by creativity. If you play that note and then you play the next one, that it's going to induce. It's basically screwing about with biology in a way.
Of course. Because you've got a certain hand of cards that you can use them, and there's certain paths that you can take.
Yeah.
And it's basically your skills, but you just bringing them out and see what can I do that I know that will sound good.
So then when you look at pop music, it's just an industrialized format of.
Yes, and the large labels are not going to take any risks. They've got various key artists that they know that virtually anything they produce. I'm not saying that these artists are not talented. Some of the current top artists are extremely talented, and it's a bit like any hierarchical structure. The people at the top are invariably very good at what they do, whatever it is they do. Yeah. And it's not to say you do hear occasionally. I will hear something that's current and in the popular charts, and it really has got something magical about it. And from my experience, those are the tunes that are remembered. The ones without any particular melody or any really decent hooks or anything in it are soon forgotten, because there's nothing for you to latch onto, nothing for you to, no earworm, no.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, obviously, there are some things that are really corny and sort of cheesy that have that earworm effect, and it's kind of almost an irritation, but you can't get it out. But there are some.
It can be bittersweet when you get something like that.
But it's the ones that, and if you think about the classics that people still cleave to, that are, a decade old, quarter of a century old, 50 years old, they're particular pieces that have got something about them, and it's normally a melody that. Occasionally there'll be a beat, but it's mainly melody that sort of lingers in the memory.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting one when you bring in sort of popular music and industrialization, or formulas to how to do it. Because you had, what was a building in New York? I look at you again, hoping that you know.
Telmo, our source of music history.
On Tin Pan Alley.
Tin Pan Alley. Oh, right.
The American Songbook.
Yeah, sure.
That must have been a formula. That these guys are coming in and they're writing 20 songs a day because they know how to do this and to go out. And it's...
In idea, it was all songs that were made for the theatre, for Broadway. So they were made to represent certain emotions. It's like Pennies from Heaven or, Summertime. Those sort of songs were made for a purpose. And just the fact that there are 2-5-1s in terms of melody, or if you want to go into musical analyses, which, that will take a long time.
A story for another day.
Exactly. We don't really need to go there. But they had a purpose, those melodies. And then eventually they got revamped into what became jazz and popular music in the 60s and stuff like that. But then we can talk about, obviously, in the 80s with the resurgence of hip-hop, because that's not really a melody, that's rhythm and
but the
African roots,
the actual
really,
but the core of it is rapping to a degree, isn't it? So I mean, if the very skillful artists, the poetry, which is essentially what it is, poetry, has a memorability that may be drawn on the structure or the messages or whatever they're trying to say. There will be something in there, and notably in a lot of that type of music, they would sample something from a previous thing. They would put a hook into it, so they would borrow a catchy hook to bring it in to sort of make it catchy, and then they would be delivering their poetry message.
Yep.
But going back to Ben's talking about sort of the experimental side of things. I think experimental music is very much in the moment, and it's almost that the person, the artist or the talent or whoever's producing it at that particular experience or performance is having a similar experience to the audience at that time, because it's very much in the moment a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that was amazing about, I don't know if they still use the same format, but Brighton Modular Sessions, which I played at the first one 2 years ago, I don't know, ages ago. The format was 4 musicians, modular stuff, and the whole point was it was all improvisational, and you had to react to the previous performer and the kind of vibe of the crowd and things.
Sounds like a rap battle. But
it was a modular rap battle. There were obviously no lyrics. But yeah, it was all in the moment. It was all improvised. And like you say, Pete, everyone was sharing the same experience. It was loud. So any, what's the word I'm looking for, Telmo? It's not harmonic. It's 2 tones that don't play
I love
nice.
how you're encyclopedia.
Discordant, dissonance, that kind of thing. It's when you get 2 oscillators, really loud, really low, that aren't in tune. It's so much more sort of deeply unsettling than if you just have it really
sounds
quiet.
Bowel opening.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Potentially.
Bowel opening.
But I
US military have got a sonic weapon, which is low frequency, which is mounted on a Humvee.
But it's that kind of
like
thing.
Monty Python's Deadliest Game.
I got to get myself on that after 3 Red Bulls and a muffin. Just
apparently, the actual effect on the recipients of this weapon is instant evacuation of the bowels.
Yeah,
the brown
I
note.
can believe it.
Yeah,
I could do that.
The good versions of that.
I think it's for crowd dispersant.
Yeah, it is.
Certainly deal with that quite.
Either that, or they should just serve people
I've
high street
produced
chicken.
quite a lot of stuff that you could class as experimental because it's just sort of, like, let's say, maybe noodling with the modular system or whatever. I've always thought the stuff I've did was very avant-garde and very out there. Now I've heard a few other things at the Modular Cafe. It's almost mainstream pop.
I think the thing is, though, when it comes to the experimental side of it, what I personally really dig is two things. Would be the experience of seeing that and that performance in that moment.
If you haven't before, go see some live experimental music.
Yeah,
it's joyous.
Yeah. And then personally, I like the ideas that come from it. Every time I listen to a record or I do something, I kind of, that's a good idea. I'll have that. Like that's cool. Let's try that in what I'm doing. So
experimental music. Use somebody else's bad ideas so you don't try them.
Yeah, kind of like, or just to kind of see how people were thinking out of the box, because that's really where kind of creativity in a sense comes from for doing something original.
Use a self-oscillating fuzz pedal as a sound source. There
exactly.
Why not? Ideas.
If you think about it, when a new genre comes in, or possibly an existing genre is modified and a new sound set is brought into it, the originators of that would have been some sort of experimental or experimentation going on.
Yeah.
I mean, later on it may be adopted as mainstream and becomes a sort of particular sound that you hear. It's particularly in vogue or fashioned for the time for a period within that genre. And sometimes you see those sound sets and techniques and then migrate out to other genres.
Yeah.
So the thing, one that comes to mind is sort of the strange sort of wobble basses and things that you've heard in the last 10 years that have crept into various kind of EDM type things, and then it starts appearing it filters down, and eventually you start hearing it in sort of very sort of charty.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but it would have started out as a very experimental technique. So if you think about analyse each sort of wave of fashion or genre at the outset, it would have been experimental.
I think that's the thing, and it's like what is experimental as well in a sense, even if it's putting 2 ideas that are already been done and putting them together in a sense that's experimental. I think I might be wrong, but I think it was Stormzy. It may or may not have been, but one of those guys in Abbey Road performing with a string orchestra, that like is pretty outside of the genre of where it started, and then to have those things put together, like, someone's got to have that idea and someone's got to experiment with that in the first place, I think, because otherwise it's like you've wasted $4,000 at Abbey Road.
Someone's got to pay for that orchestra.
That's what I mean. Like someone's got to put that together. I'm sure that so much goes into it.
I always sometimes think that sometimes it's a bit of a vanity project. People have arrived when they're working with an orchestra.
Oh yeah, I mean there's that was a sort of off the cuff one, but yeah, like, there's totally that. But I mean, even stuff like, did the Beatles need an orchestra? Like, that was vanity, right?
Yes, they did.
No,
it was amazing.
I know it was amazing, and I'm not.
You mean
I'm
the
not
string
denying
quartet that they've used for Eleanor Rigby? For example.
Yeah, I mean that could be
and like A Day in the Life.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the experimental side of it. I mean it
was actually George Martin's idea of having a string quartet,
and it worked beautifully. But he had to have that idea in the first place. I mean, let's say Eleanor Rigby plays it pretty safe.
Yeah.
From the point of view, it's like adding just another component.
It does.
Whereas Day in the Life. That's pretty like, it's the cliche one to go to for like anything out there. So I want you all to play the same thing but at different times and do it like this. But it really worked. Like it was incredible, and it did make you feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
As you have the other way around, you have Michael Tippett, that is basically a classical composer that during World War II decided to add swung to his orchestra, a swung rhythm to and black.
I can't even imagine that.
Music into an orchestral scenario, which was very interesting. I do recommend you to listen to A Child in Time by Michael Tippett if you'd like to hear something different, experimental.
Your weekly Telmo music recommendation.
Yeah, we should.
Should do that.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
Let's round up the experimental music chat then. A weekly music recommendation. Telmo's kicked it off with, who was it again? Repeat it for us.
Michael Tippett, A Child in Time.
Lovely stuff. That'll be some slightly experimental World War II era orchestra.
Yeah.
Andy Rue,
20s.
you got anything that you've listened to recently that you think everybody needs to listen to right this second? I'm telling you to do it now because I haven't thought of anything.
That's okay. What would I say? I've been listening to Jack Starber, his album Pop Food, which is pretty cool. It's kind of, I want to say it's kind of jazzy, but maybe it is, maybe it's not. But it's got like, have you listened to it? You're nodding your head, but you haven't.
No.
You would love it.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, there's a song Buttercup, which is pretty catchy. But generally the album is pretty interesting as well from a sonic perspective. I'm still trying in my head to work out whether or not it's lo-fi, like that it's not. That it is lo-fi, or whether or not it's on purpose lo-fi, but it doesn't matter because it's pretty catchy and pretty interesting. So Pop Food, Jack Starber, I would definitely recommend listening to that.
Gotcha.
Pete? I'm ready to go if you need a little bit of time, Pete.
Okay, you go first.
Nice one. So, I was always aware of the artist Infected Mushroom. You've probably heard the name. I didn't know any. One of my friends at school was a big fan, but a colleague from work recommended Flamingo from the album Return to the Source.
1 second.
What, do you actually know it?
Is it, how many shrimps do you have?
No, that's Cara Cara Bonito.
And I was going to recommend that to everyone to get them to hate me.
That's an interesting.
That's forever connected now. Forever connected.
So no, not Cara Cara Bonito. You're going to listen to Flamingo by Infected Mushroom from the album Return to the Source. This has some really interesting guitar turnaroundy stuff with an obviously electronic kind of thing. Interesting vocal stuff. Some really nice creative effects. Really well made, but it's just a really fun track.
If you want to hear
Andy, don't make them do it.
Yeah, if you want to hear that hook that Pete was describing that makes you really happy but kind of want to kill yourself as well, listen to Flamingo by
Cara Cara Bonito.
It's lit. It's the only word to describe that song. It's
do you know it, Telmo?
I don't know it, but it's got flamingo in it, so what's not to like?
Outrageously.
It's like sort of part Japanese, part English rap. It's with some electronic stuff. It's odd.
The only way I could describe it is it's basically the song form of heroin. You know it's bad for you and it is kind of killing you, but it's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. Like for like 5 minutes, it's outrageous.
Awesome,
and then
man.
like,
I'm not about it. Look, Pete looks like he's found the one.
Yeah, so the only thing that comes to mind, and it's relatively experimental, but it's very commercial because it's been very successful, would be Burial.
The band, the album, the song?
The artist.
Ah, right. I don't know them. Don't
most probably the studio album that is my favourite would be Untrue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very lo-fi, and he's very renowned for getting quite famous lyrics and a cappellas, but he edits them. I don't know how he avoids actually being sued.
Copyrighted.
I think he's got to a status that people are quite happy that he's actually done it.
Fair. That old chestnut.
But it's very ambient. He's very good at sort of dropping in a little tune, but he'll just give you a little taster and take it away, and then that's the last you hear. There's no more, and you just whet your appetite, and you find yourself having to go back and listen to it again.
Sounds beautiful.
So go from the extent, sort of tracks that are only 30 seconds long to
that's annoying.
5 to 10 minute ones.
Cool.
But and that's the particular album I'm familiar with. But if we're going to do this as a regular thing, I've got some others, but I'd have to do R&D to get the correct
we should come up with a little topic.
Brew that up as a roundup for each week. So I guess that brings us to the end of Rack Addicts After Hours episode 11. Thank you very much for listening. We're now actually on a few different services. Kind of what we got Google Play Music, we've got iTunes, we've got Spotify.
And a few of the US ones, which I
don't know anything.
Yeah.
Hello, America.
Hello, America.
We have had listeners in America, and Canada, and Singapore.
Singapore as well. Nice
yes.
one. Well, hello from the UK. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Bye now.